Welcome to United Shades of Gray, Conversations of Race in America on WSGW. Now, here is your host, Kareem Bowen.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another edition of United Shades of Gray, Conversations of Race in America. Today, we are going to be talking to all of you that are out there. At the beginning of the year, we always talk about finding purpose, and we're going to pursue passion and all of these amazing things. And well, now it's time for a first quarter checkup. How are we doing? We're going to talk about finding your passion and your purpose. I have in the studio with me my main man, John, being the place to be. John, what's good?
Hello.
What's crack-a-lacking is what I'm going to say to you next time. And also in the social media stream, for those of you who are tuning in to our social media stream, you'll see the smooth, the suave, the debonair, sporting that vintage Hawaiian look. Mark Bassett, how are you doing, Mark?
I'm all right, man. How's it going out there, brother?
Hey.
Shaka, bra. How's it?
We're doing good this way in Michigan. Right. Spring has finally sprung in the Midwest, and we are glad about it. All right, we're going to get into our show today. Because the beginning, as we talk about what's hot off the press, there's some interesting things that are happening. I think will be very good conversation. I want to start off, first of all, by talking, sharing a little bit about the Detroit, not necessarily sharing, but having a conversation about the NFL draft and Detroit. John, was it thumbs up? What was the situation? What do you think?
I didn't pay attention. I didn't watch the actual draft. We had a lot in the news about it, and it seemed like all in all a positive thing. Michigan is big on tourism, and it's one more thing to bring people into the state. But I didn't actually personally pay attention to it.
Did you pay attention, Mark?
I watched about the first 10 picks only because there was going to be a Notre Dame player drafted in the first 10 picks.
Where did he get picked? Where did he go?
5 by the Chargers. The prediction was either the Chargers or the Titans. He was the best offensive tackle, at least that's what people think in the draft, and he went with number 5 with the Chargers.
His alma mater, so that's why he's locking in on that one.
Yeah.
Well, I paid attention through the first 17 picks. I'm going to tell you, I thought it was, it went the way I thought it would go. It was interesting. Because I'd never been to an NFL draft that was outside or even seen one that was held outdoors.
Go ahead.
I would think they have had them before, but again, I don't religiously watch the draft. But I mean, if they had one in a warm weather city, I would think it would be outside, but maybe not.
Is that not risky for Michigan to do something like that?
I was in Kansas City a couple years ago, and I think they were getting ready to do some outdoor stuff for the draft when it was there.
Well, I'm going to tell you that I've never seen it that way. I have been to the NFL draft before. It is an exciting moment. It is like a marathon because there's a million selections that take place with all of the positions that they have to fill. But I got to say, Detroit, salute, shout out to Detroit. I give you 2 thumbs up. Looking at the pre-draft stuff and everything that was going on, I had friends. I was a part actually on, I think it was Tuesday. I was down in Detroit for a tech tour. And so I was working with people and everyone was coming in town. When I tell you this was an all-star studded NFL edition of the tech tour with NFL champions and everything being a part of it, it was absolutely phenomenal. The administrative staff from the NFL was there. Their digital and tech people were all a part of it. So it was a lot of fun. And everybody, I do mean everybody, who is a part of the NFL and the agents and everyone was in town, and it was very, very electric. And so I think that it is a good look for Detroit. They broke a record for the first day with 275,000 people.
Wow.
In attendance.
That's the benefit of having it outside. You can't do that indoors. So
that is bananas.
Yeah.
275,000 people. So that was the first day NFL draft record. USC quarterback Caleb Williams, as I anticipated, was drafted first by the Chicago Bulls. Then there was a homegrown Midwest individual here. We had going at number 17 for Alabama, Dallas Turner to the Minnesota Vikings. His family here, shout out to the Reed family, is from the city of Saginaw. And so that was really exciting. And it is, I think that the draft is like nothing else because it is filled with who you're going to see when you go to these drafts. Like, who am I going to see at the draft? And then you're also like, who's going to go first? The anticipation. Is this someone you know? And then I must say, there's a young man that is waiting for a phone call. I did speak with him on last night. Saginaw Valley player with the agents and the folks from the NFL that I had work out with him. He has an NFL body. I anticipate he will be getting a call probably by tomorrow, at least to be able to go to one of the camps and get a real workout in it. And because he's a big body. So it was exciting. It was fun. I watched the first 17 picks, and then after that, I went to sleep. Yesterday was one of those days. I was like, I just want to go to bed. I don't care who gets drafted, what happens. I just want to go to sleep. But I do want to talk about this, and I think this is interesting. We mentioned this before, and I'm talking about the Chicago mayor is in threat of a recall, total recall. Remember the movie Total Recall with Arnold Schwarzenegger?
Yes.
You do remember, Mark?
Oh yeah, that's the one where is it the game show?
Yeah.
Richard Dawson is the host.
Yeah.
That's a great movie, man.
Richard Dawson, who used to kiss all of the women in their mouth on Family Feud. I was like, how many diseases are being spread right now? But yeah, that was the movie Total Recall. This young buck in here with me, he's sitting here like, I have no idea what you're talking about.
I've heard of it, but I've never seen it.
You gotta go.
You gotta see it. It's like a classic Schwarzenegger movie.
It is classic.
I'm not a big Arnold fan.
I know, but just watch it anyway, so we can talk about it next time.
All
right. So he's gonna watch it. But anyway, so he's up for recall, and it's crazy. Mayor Brandon Johnson, he is being challenged by one of the community activists in the community who's saying, listen, this guy has to go. But what's really interesting about this is because, everybody always says that they want to recall the mayor. They tried to recall their mayor about 10 years ago, unsuccessfully. But what is interesting in this particular situation is that the police union, I think it is, has joined on board to support the effort of raising the signatures that are necessary in order to have him removed. 56,464 signatures. So the Fraternal Order of Police have joined in this effort. I think this is crazy.
Well, I mean, the reason they're looking to recall him is not what you would typically, see. And it's, people who are leading the recall is not what you would typically expect going after this mayor. So that's, to me, what's really interesting.
No, it's very interesting. One of the things, well, so let's qualify that. So the Fraternal Order Police are involved because they have an issue with everything that happened in 2020, like everything seemed to be happening in Chicago and Minnesota. And so they went through, they had judicial reviews coming in from the feds, and they were supposed to have some mediation practice that was supposed to take place before any actions took against any of the officers. And so I guess they have an issue that mediations have not been taking place when firings and things that have happened to police officers. And so they're ticked off on it. And I guess this is just the perfect opportunity. Hey, if someone else is going to take the charge and start getting these signatures and folks are upset, this is a great way for us to get the added support.
I mean, it's an unlikely alliance.
Is it not? It is. And I'll tell you this because a large number of the individuals, their mayor is they have a black mayor in Chicago. And the folks that are screaming and taking the lead on this recall are African Americans. That's who is outraged in this particular situation. And so the police officers and this body of activists are now on the same
side. Yeah.
What a difference a day makes, right?
It does, man. Yeah, and I mean, the community is upset because this mayor is diverting more and more funds to immigrants versus supporting their kind of poor communities, which I get. I understand.
That's it. And we've kind of touched bases on that conversation. But look at this. This is the perfect example of the enemy of my enemy is my friend. So
Yeah.
now we got Black activists and other individuals in Chicago uniting with the Fraternal Order of Police. Is that the most unlikely pairing that I've heard in a long time?
It's pretty close. Yeah.
It is very interesting.
Yeah.
So so they're mad about that. They're mad about, and this is what I would be mad about, because I've seen this happen across the country in different places. The potential for taxpayers to have to foot the bill for a new stadium by the Chicago Bulls. That would be enough for me to recall everybody. Like heads must roll. And I say this because I was out in Oakland when they had the Warriors that were in Oakland, they had the Oakland A's, and what's the other Oakland?
The Raiders. They had the Raiders.
Yeah, the Oakland Raiders, the craziest fans. The Oakland Raiders. They were the best fans in the NFL. I'm telling you, die hard. And I saw when they were coming in and Oracle Arena was there, and they did this whole massive overall when it left from being, was it overall? It was Oracle, and then it became there's another tech company out there that it was before. But anyways, and the money that they spent on updating this arena. What was it before? Did you find? All right. And the money that was spent in that process, I was like, this is bananas, right? And then I was leaving just as they were having the petition to move the Warriors from Oakland, which is a very interesting place when you go see when they're playing on the edge of the water in the hood in Oakland. Everywhere in Oakland is a hood.
Yeah.
So it was, except for the hills. So it was interesting seeing that petition and the people fighting it. And at the moment, I didn't understand why it was such a big deal. But when I saw the fact, like when the Warriors left, the restaurants, the gas,
it devastates the local businesses. I mean, because that's how they survive.
Security, the parking, and it left. I mean, there is like a crater, like there was an asteroid that hit Oakland where the Warriors were playing, and then you look at other teams also deciding to leave. It was devastation. I mean, it's crazy that these teams come in and they have these situations. So when I saw this happening in Chicago, it caught my attention because I thought to myself, the Bears, they paid for this stadium. That stadium still isn't paid for, and they're moving. So who absorbs that debt? And I think there's about $660 million that they're still trying to figure out, like, okay, who's going to pay this money and when do we get our money back? This is absolutely crazy. What do you guys think about teams being able to come in and get those tax breaks that our citizens pay for these teams to come in? What are your thoughts about that? And then,
well, ultimately, the teams aren't to blame. I mean, local politicians don't have to give them anything. They do it for just the reason you're talking about. And it's a boon to local business in theory, on paper anyway. And the logic is like, well, if we don't do it, someone else is going to do it. And, and so ultimately the teams are just using that situation to their advantage. But ultimately, a local government doesn't have to agree to do that. But they're doing it. And for the reason you talked about, because it brings in a lot of dollars. Theoretically, it brings in tax dollars. So it's not an easy situation.
And this is what happens when local politicians do that against the will of their constituents. They get recall petitions. They get voted out of office. This is the accountability that I've harped on a few times, especially when it comes to local and federal politicians, is fine. They do something you don't like, hold them accountable. And this is exactly what's happening.
So they have that going on in Chicago. Meanwhile, we have seen exactly what has taken place. What do you think the reason is when we look at, because we had the Detroit Pistons and the Lions. The Lions left Pontiac. The Pistons left Auburn Hills to head back down to Detroit. What do you think is the difference? Because it doesn't seem like those areas are decimated. Of course, those are probably some of the wealthiest zip codes.
Yeah, Auburn Hills is, it's nice, but they got a lot of other stuff. So.
There's three counties that connect right there. I think or three townships, like Lake Orion Township, and two other that they're the wealthiest. That is the wealthiest zip code in Michigan in terms of
Yeah.
housing and real estate.
Yeah.
I've gone through there and seen some of the athletes' homes. I'm like, and not only athletes, but business owners.
Yep.
You're talking 10 bedrooms, 20 rooms in a house. I'm like, this is crazy.
Yeah.
But so they have the infrastructure, so it doesn't decimate those communities when they leave.
Yeah, I mean, imagine what would happen if Dow Chemical pulled out of Midland. What would happen to that town?
Because it has to do with what is the town built on. If the city is built on having that tourism, that draw of those sports teams downtown, and then they pull out, well, then that's the foundation of it. Whereas these other zip codes that you're talking about, they've got other things going for them.
So do you think that Detroit in the future, the Lions are hot right now, so nothing's going to move with them. But could you see in the foreseeable future teams like Detroit and the Tigers moving back out into the suburbs, or do you think that they're downtown?
Oh, I would actually say never say never. So because you don't know what the future holds and what everything looks like. And so I would say never say never. I mean, who would have thought, the Colts would move from Baltimore? Who would have thought the Browns would move? So you just don't know. And so I think anything's possible.
So what's the answer? So how do we keep, politicians, local citizens have to put the onus on the politicians, or are we so enamored with sports that we're willing to take the risk just to have a team to root for in our backyard?
I think initially fans typically are supportive of those things because they want to have a professional team. It's interesting. They're much more willing to support that than improving their local schools with higher millages. It's always interesting to me.
That was going to be my next statement, Mark. You took the words right out of my mouth. No, we want a football team,
Yeah.
But education, we're not paying for those kids to go to school. Like what?
Yeah.
But anyways, it's what's happening. It is what is on the premise. Shout out once again. Great job, Detroit. I was proud to be a Michigander. Is that what we're called, Michiganders?
Yep. I've heard Michiganian, and it just sounds wrong.
I
prefer
Michiganian. Michiganders. When I hear Michiganders, I feel like I'm an animal, like out to pasture.
Like a duck, goose and a gander. Yes.
Welcome all you Michiganders that are in the social media streaming that will hear this call in replay. No, but anyways, I do want to talk really quick, and I do and I don't. I want to talk about this really briefly, just throw it there and get some thoughts from you guys. Number 45, former President Donald Trump has officially started one of his cases. This is the hush money case. It's in full swing. David Pecker is the first person testifying, but we're going to hear from some lovely people like the beautiful, the illustrious, the bustious Stormy Daniels. Is that a word? We just made what? Yeah. Stormy Daniels, Karen McDougal, the former Playmate. And this is really about sex, lies, and politics. This is a book waiting. I'm like, where is Sidney Sheldon and what's the other late Danielle Steele, or those
novels?
Yes.
Yeah.
This is fodder for those moments. What do you guys think about this?
Oh, I don't know what to think. I mean, it's just, to me, again, it's just more in the line of what we've come to expect with this guy. I mean, I think he's guilty. I personally think he's guilty. I think he'll be found guilty. What that means, I don't know.
I don't think it'll matter to anybody.
No,
well, I think the people that support them will can continue to say, like, well, this is a conspiracy. It's set up. Just like they go, like, he falls. At least there are reports he falls asleep in the proceeding, and he's really not falling asleep. He's playing people. He's a master. He's a genius, which, he's the furthest thing from a genius.
Me and number 45 don't have a lot of things in common.
Yeah.
What I will say, I'm not going to say the term genius because I think he's borderline a different word, but he is a former president, and there is a level of respect that I would like to give to former presidents. But what I will say, there are things, and I hate to say this, because the things that I don't like about him are so in contrast to what I'm getting ready to say. There are things about him that I actually appreciate.
It seems like every time we talk about Donald Trump, you're talking about, there are things I like about him. I haven't heard you say a single specific thing where it's
he says what he thinks. What he likes is he says what he thinks.
Thank you, Mark.
He says things that people
I'm
generals are
gonna
afraid to
I'm
say.
gonna end this on Tuesday.
Yeah.
And he does it on Tuesday. And people are like, I can't believe he did. He told you he was gonna do it. I
Yeah, but
like
there are a
that.
lot of things he says he's going to do and he doesn't do as well.
And that's true.
I
But
think what people really like is he says what's on their mind, and he doesn't. He's not. I
he
think
gets
again,
to
the people
everything
who are
that's on my mind.
disenfranchised like the fact that he's making fun of and belittling.
Is there a similarity there, Mark? Maybe that I'm connected with, because I like people who are going to shoot it straight and just say what they feel.
I do too. I just don't think you need to belittle and demean.
No,
and
I
mock
agree. I agree.
people in disagreeing with them, and I'd like to think that the office is above such things.
But the biggest thing is, since this guy has left office, he has been in the media every single day since he's left.
Yeah,
that's masterful. And the ability that I know that there are Hollywood celebrities and probably athletes that's like wish they could get the mojo on that. How do we do this? But when I look at that, that is masterful. I mean,
in a sense, I guess if it'll be interesting to see how history portrays this guy, and if you want to, and it could be very negative, could be, and is that how you really want to be remembered forever? As someone
I want The Apprentice. Is it the Apprentice? Was that the name of the movie?
Yeah.
I want the movie to come back, because could you imagine former President Donald Trump now running The Apprentice? He is going to act like he is the God of gods.
Yeah. He already does.
He already does. He already does.
Yeah.
But he is made for TV. But anyways, I just wanted to throw those couple things out there. We're going to talk about, and we're going to switch directions right now. Mark, you are effectively, if I'm not mistaken, you're the how shall we say it? Well-seasoned. You're the well-seasoned individual of this tree.
I'm an old guy. I'm 63, and I'm the oldest guy here by a long shot.
All right, so this is really good, because the conversation that we're gonna have, I want to look at this through the reflection of, the generations. I want to have one of those conversations. So in the studio, in the stream, we have baby boomers, which represents Mark. Then we have, I would be considered, I know I want to be a millennial so bad, because that would shave a few years off. But I'm a Gen Xer. That's 44 to 59. And then, John, you are a millennial.
I'm Gen Z.
Gen Z. He's the youngest guy.
Oh my God.
Yep.
Are you serious?
I'm very early Gen Z.
I would actually say Jonathan is not your stereotypical Gen Zer, though.
You're not. You give off millennial vibes.
Do not call me a millennial.
You give off millennial vibes, bro.
He's an old man in a young guy's body.
I don't like that label.
I forgot you are a Gen Zer.
Yep.
Yeah.
So this is going to be very interesting. More interesting than I thought. But I think the biggest difference, because I think we're still defying what Gen Z and Jonathan, Mark is.
You know what? Sorry to interrupt you. This would be a great, like we had that dinner and we had to sit down, and this would be a really interesting discussion where you have a little bit more time and a broader panel around what the path you're just going down.
Yeah, and our social media stream seems to think that you are very wise as well. You're a very wise young man, Jonathan.
I don't like the Gen Z stereotypes. I'm against them.
Okay, so really quickly, what are the stereotypes? Because that's what we're going to start off talking about.
Just the idea that the kids these days, their noses buried in their phones, texting all the time, and they don't know how to socialize with one another. Just because you old people don't understand how we socialize doesn't mean we don't know how.
Every generation, Jonathan. Every generation says that about the next generation. Down.
Exactly.
This is not a new phenomenon.
Nope.
So.
I have never been at a loss for words. He just said, "You old people." Oh my gosh, we're gonna
age discrimination. I think
that is. I'm struggling over here. We're gonna come back and we're gonna talk about finding your passion and your purpose. Stick, stay, don't go away. We'll be back with more United Shades of Gray.
You're listening to United Shades of Gray on WSGW.
This is Kareem, and you're back with more United Shades of Gray, conversations of race in America. Before the stream, before the break, excuse me, we were sitting here and I was looking at some of the comments of folks that were in the stream, and they were talking about how wise Jonathan was. And then Jonathan made the unwise decision to call Market Eye old people, but it's okay. We're going to let you live another day.
I call myself an old guy. I'm 63. I'm an old guy, man.
I'm too young, suave, and debonair to be old at this moment. I'm not going to be old for another 20 years. So we got some time to rock with this. But the reason I wanted to have this conversation, there is, and I'm going to give a shout out to Howard Rankins. Howard is retiring, and Mark, you'll understand where this is going. He is retiring he's a radiology tech trainer. So he's trained 36 classes in radiology for Covenant Healthcare Systems, right? He's been in his job for 48 and a half years. And he's slated to retire next Tuesday. First of all, regardless of which group you fall in, that is a phenomenal feat, and that is super duper duper rare.
That's impressive.
It is very impressive. But it brought to my attention, like, okay, wow, the thought is of these generations is that baby boomers, you go to college, you get a degree, find a company that you can work for, retire, get a 401k, and that is life, right?
No, actually, back then it was a pension.
A pension, yeah, pension.
Not a
back
401k.
then with the old guys.
Different things, yeah.
So it was a pension, right? And then we look at the Generation X, which I happen to be a part of. We were, hey, go get an education, do this. And I think that there was some semblance of, I want to do what makes me happy, but it was really about following the direction and the instruction of those baby boomers who made it all about, getting a job that you can, have a house with a white picket fence, 2.5 kids.
Back then, and I'll speak to it. Like, I was married at 23. I had a kid by 24. I had 2 kids by 27. And so all of a sudden at a really early age, you're accountable for a family. And it's like, okay, I got to support this family. So.
No, Mark, I'll say this. So keeping in line and step with that. So I decided I didn't want to work for anybody. And we probably had the most number of folks who left the private. No, because you guys, millennials, are really good for being entrepreneurs. They have so many things you can be. Who thought you could be an entrepreneur just making videos on social media? What was social media when we were growing up? I'm from the generation who remembers the corded phone that you would have. Everybody had that phone with the cord on it that you could, get on the phone in the kitchen and walk 2 rooms over, and the cord would extend all the way to the next room.
I've got one of those in my kitchen today. So.
I'm the last generation who remembers those things. I remember, mobile phones being these big things that were in cars, and and now we went to flip phones, and now
I want to point out I moved into my new house almost fully furnished, and there are cordless phone stations all over the house. There's one in the living room, one in the kitchen, one in the den, one downstairs, a couple downstairs.
Cordless or corded?
Cordless.
But
there's these. I'm not doing anything with them. I'm sitting there going, what am I going to do with that?
Oh, you mean the little docks with the little phone?
Yeah, when you still had a landline, but it was wireless landline.
Yeah.
So just showing the difference there.
And the cool thing about that, when you grew up in the house, is if you had brothers or sisters or siblings, you could pick up the other phone sometimes and listen to the phone
but you
calls.
can hear the beep. On the cordless ones.
We still tried. Go in there and make noise. I'm gonna pick up the phone while you're in this so I can listen to what they're talking about. But that's not what we're talking. So what I'm talking about is this concept of passion and purpose. And Mark, your generation taught my generation that you got to go to school, get an education. The ending portions of my generation, the younger end of that, started here, reading books like Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Those books that, like, hey, if you go to work for somebody else, you're making them money and they're enjoying life. And so the mentalities began to change. Then we see the millennials coming in, and this is interesting, Mark, because you were in leadership in corporate America doing the millennial phase of life. And what I mean by that is when they were entering to the workplace and the billions of dollars that companies spent just to understand the millennials.
Yes. Well, I mean, we didn't.
But
yeah,
you saw that being kind of the theme, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, ultimately, you have a new wave of employees who are fundamental. And I think, again, in a certain sense, this always happened. But I think it's the differences between some of these generations are so different now because of technology and how quickly things change in the world, that there's more of an effort to understand, well, what is really meaningful to younger employees versus older employees. I mean, like for me, the perfect example was like that the company should have a purpose statement.
Yes.
And to me, our purpose was really clear, you know, or so I thought. Like, okay, we want to be the preferred supplier of polysilicon to the solar and semiconductor industries, and we're going to do these things to make that happen. And we're going to make money, and we're going to have a good culture where people grow and develop. That's our purpose. But what people were really looking for is like the fact that, okay, we make polysilicon, but so what? What does polysilicon do? Well, it actually is the fundamental building block for renewable energy and, you know, connectivity, you know, all the computer stuff. And
everything that's
you understand that, like, every day you go in and you're not just making some rock that goes out, that what you make impacts the world around you, because, you know, IT technology wouldn't exist and solar energy wouldn't exist without what we make. It's pretty powerful. And I actually thought, well, this is BS. This is a bunch of waste of time, but I'll do it because people are asking me to do it. But it was actually a very powerful thing to do for, frankly, all the employees, myself included.
Well, because it ties purpose to your work, right?
Yeah, exactly. And that's ultimately, I think everyone, while people weren't cognizant of at my age, especially earlier in their life, it's about purpose. When I reflect back on my career, and, you know, and I started doing that about 10, 15 years ago, every decision I made from a career perspective was tied back to a singular purpose. And for me, that purpose was, I want to be in positions, more higher in different positions where I have more accountability, more authority to make a positive impact on the business and the lives of the people inside the business. And I wanted, you know, and so I just wanted more accountability. And that's why I made every decision I made.
Mark, I continually tell you this. I don't think that you understand what the value that you have the potential to bring to certain circles. I really think that you should be doing master classes. And I'll say this. I'm going to say this, and this is, I'm going to say it. All right. So you were the CEO of Hemlock Semiconductor, HSE, right?
Yep.
All right. So they have new leadership, and AB's great. He's a nice guy, but there are some things their current, and I'm talking about their current leadership, that now that you are removed, and I have these community conversations, and I'm talking with individuals that are in that particular that particular business, they're like, oh my gosh, he is so missed. Because what you just said about helping individuals understand that I'm not just doing a menial task, but this task is tied to a greater purpose.
Right.
And what you're doing has an impact globally. That is absolutely, I think it's essential, especially as we begin to make a transition from working for a pension to working for a 401k, which was my generation, to what we see happening with millennials, which was really the thing is like, isn't it possible for me to work and also have a purpose, like have purpose and work marry together?
Yeah.
I can work and live life on purpose and enjoy what I do.
I think they're much more, I think, younger generations, and I admire it. And on the flip side, you can talk about things I worry about, but you know, that they want to feel like they're making a difference in the world somehow, some way, which at that age for me, it was like, man, I just want to start working and making some money. You know, that's what you do. And so I admire the drive to, you know, I want to do something that I find meaningful and that somehow I'm making a difference in the world. And I think that's super powerful.
Okay, now we have literally turned into the old guys. What often happens is when you get the old people together, they talk and they let the young people just sit in the room and not say anything. Mark, I mean, Jonathan, as we look and we're having this conversation and you look at your life, because you actually we're skipping a generation because you are what are you, Gen Zer, right?
Gen Z. Yeah.
Okay, so what is the most important thing as you look at your career and your future? What's most important? Is it making money, or is it purpose, or what drives you?
I think purpose is a very large part of it personally. But looking at my generation, I think we trend towards the um, older generations would call it instant gratification. It is
Yes.
what can I do right now to make myself happy? And I think that stems a lot from kind of a sense of hopeless cynicism that is just like,
Why is out of curiosity, why do you think your generation, because I see it in some of my younger kids, why do you think your generation is so cynical? Because I don't understand it.
because pretty much every message that we've been told has many people in my age group believe almost every message they've been told is a lie. The whole you can go to college, graduate, get a job, join the workforce, get that white picket fence with those 2.5 kids, and live a fantastic
and
life.
It's unattainable.
It is absolutely unattainable.
Yeah, I would argue that's kind of always been a certain case. I mean, I graduated second in my class at Notre Dame and didn't get a job.
But you still believed it was possible.
But and Mark, to his point, my generation, I mean, let's look at this. And so when we talk about purpose, so purpose was something that was very important to me. It was not necessarily super important to most of the members of my generation. But let me tell you what was important: freedom. Freedom was very important to my generation. And what's crazy is that I have a roster of friends. I mean, we're talking dozens and dozens of friends who all went to school. We all have, have created amazing careers, doctors, lawyers, entrepreneurs, all kinds of things. These amazing opportunities have done really well, quote unquote, well for ourselves. And all of us are single. And I thought about what you were saying, Mark, how you're like, you started early, 20, got kids, I have friends who are actually and I'm sitting there, I'm like, I need to recycle through some of my friends because they're all accomplished. They're all doing well. They're all living life on purpose. They have the freedom. Travel and all of these things are things that we don't worry about, but all of us are single. The pulling the trigger and making it, because our freedom and our ability to enjoy life took a precedence in a period of time. And many of us are not, we're in our 40s and 50s, and we're now at a position that we're kind of like, was not having kids such a big thing? Not really. We can go rent some and, take them for a walk and give them back. Well. I mean, but yeah. And so it's a generational difference, I think. When you look at life and you look at how things are positioned, and I understand that you are kind of a unicorn with the Gen Zers because you are super mature. How do you view purpose in life and those things that are important?
I think I should go back a little bit. I think there is a large part of Gen Z that is now coming around to the idea of we need to pursue that. We need to pursue meaning in life beyond scrolling. Because this is, you see mental health issues skyrocketing with younger generations. It stems in a large way from that lack of stability, and you see a lot of Gen Z coming around to the idea of, and millennials coming around to the idea of, we need to build that stability for ourselves. We need to pursue something that is going to give us something to work off of, and that's why you see a lot more people working out. You see a lot more people pursuing meaningful relationships and trying to find purpose in that way. I'd say it's a subset of the generation. It's not the trend, but
can I qualify how I see that, what you're saying?
Yeah, go for it.
I see this, and Mark, I'm interested in seeing what your thoughts are. I see that, especially the second half of millennials, the younger half of millennials, and the Gen Zers. What I see is not that there's a pursuit for meaningful things, but I think that because of social media, things that we weren't exposed to that were happening around the world, Hollywood, we would see them on TV. We never had their personal lives. So we see all of these different things. And I see that there's a pursuit for what people put on display as this is life. And it may, so now there's like, I want to be in love, but it's not necessarily like I really pursue that I want love, but everyone on social media has love. I want a life like Kim K. I want to be
Do
in
you
love
really?
like
I
Taylor
mean,
Swift. She found her knight in shining armor. And so I see those things as being the things that drive what those motivations are. Does that make sense?
I can see that.
yeah, I mean, I think that kind of ties into what Jonathan was talking about earlier, which is, the inundation of social media and a lot of like glamorizing things that frankly aren't even real when it's all said and done. A lot of this is, like a lot of these influencers, what they're doing is actually not even real and not a real representation of their life.
What
And I think people are coming to the realization. I've seen a number of articles now of like influencer fatigue, and people are turning off of social media because they're coming to realize it's just not really meaningful, nor is it really real.
And I think as people turn away from that, they start to find those pursuits that are meaningful and do have purpose, and that gives me at least a little bit of hope.
I mean, because there's a lot of things I really admire about, Jonathan's generation, and I see it in my own kids. My biggest concern, frankly, is life is full of like hard knocks and bumps in the road and disappointments, and what I don't see is like the perseverance or the strength to power through those. And just like I've got to put my foot on the ground
Yes.
and go through it, man.
Thank you, Mark. You said it. Mark said it. You guys are a bunch of mushmallows. Yeah, we may be old, but at least we can take a licking and keep on ticking. Everything falls apart, it seems. And I'm of course I'm not being facetious, but I'm kind of
You're exaggerating to make a point.
I'm exaggerating a small bit, but it seems like these Gen Xers, Gen Zers, young kids, not Gen X. I'm a Gen X, not us. We're together. The Gen Zers and millennials, it seems like they fall apart when the wind blows too much.
Now let me
Uh-oh.
look at the world in which we grew up.
Okay.
A bomb goes off in Ukraine, and suddenly we are 2 steps away from being drafted into World War III.
Have you heard of World War I?
And everybody
World War
knows
II,
That has been a fear even
the
for Gen X.
Vietnam War. Have you heard of those
No.
things? The Great Depression.
Now, that's true because information happens on your doorstep in your hand.
So every single update, 12 times a day, we're going back and forth from the end of the world is coming. Oh, look, a puppy. We're moving for like there isn't any. Of course,
Overconsumption.
Yeah, of course, people my age break down when something actually goes wrong because every single bad thing that happens, every single little bad thing that happens in the world is being blasted at us 24/7.
One thing I'll tell you.
I mean, I guess again, I've got the benefit of age and having lived longer and lived through different things.
That you've lived longer than either of us have. Yes,
I don't know if you add up you two guys, I may be older than the sum of you two guys. Not quite, but I'm getting there. But I keep and I get it. I do think like social media and 24 hours news is, there's some good things, but there's a lot of downside that comes with it because you're inundated with information and people tend to overreact to information. But what I always try to remind people is, yes, things are tough right now. But if you go from like 1915 to 1945 and you've got 2 world wars, the Great Depression, the Black Plague, or like take the late 60s, early 70s, the Vietnam War, race riots all over the country, cities burning, times have been way worse than they are right now. Way worse.
But I think times have been worse. But to Jonathan's point, Mark, I remember, okay, now I'm going to date myself to some degree. I remember growing up when we had black and white TVs, right? So, and I remember going to color television. And I remember that we had a number of TV channels that would be on. And then at night, at like 2:00 in the morning, after night tracks went off the TV, you'd hear, dun, 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 dun,
Yeah.
Midnight
when I was a kid. Well, you had
TV
3
went
channels
off
when I was a kid, and news was like once a day at 6:00.
Yeah, but
to
now,
Jonathan's point, it's
these
literally
guys
constant live stream of bad news. So I get it. So,
all of the time. Go ahead, John.
Yeah.
So when things are falling apart in the world and the quote unquote adults are freaking out, and we see the quote unquote adults freaking out about every little thing that happens. Yeah.
Well, I think they're doing it again. It creates. I mean, that's what creates clicks. That's what creates views, and it's all about, frankly, money. And I mean, I'd like to think eventually, people will figure that out and go like, okay, I'm not going to overreact to this situation.
And I'm curious, how do you define purpose or passion, Mark? How do you define passion? What is passion to you?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I think it's what really motivates you or drives you. And so, like I said, like when I was in business, and it took me a long time to kind of get to where I was. I spent the first half of my career taking a tortuous road, making different career decisions to do something else. And then I got to, running businesses and then running HSC, which I absolutely loved that period of my life. And like I said earlier, what I subconsciously was doing but didn't realize until I was halfway through that journey is I was seeking positions where I felt like, because I thought I could do it, make an impact in people's lives in the world I played, which was the chemical industry.
Mark,
by running really good businesses, delivering exceptional results. But at the foundation of all of that, creating an environment where people felt like they were a part of something, and that we cared about their person, and that what they were doing was important, and that we were partners in helping them grow and develop both personally and professionally.
Mark, I want for those, because I believe millennials that may listen to this, Gen Zers, I think it's the Y generation that's under you guys. What would you say to them who desire to have a good life, but purpose, like working and having purposeful intent with that work, is essential for them? What would you say to them as a former employer, as a former CEO?
Yeah.
What would you say to them?
Well, I would ask them to really, I did a lot of self-reflection. Some people read, some people listen to things, but really try to understand what is it that brings joy to you that when you do it, and and so like I went through a point in my career where I was making a lot of money, and I won't tell you how much, but a lot.
We've talked about this.
I was miserable.
No, go ahead.
And I was miserable. And I tell my kids to this day to do something that you love doing. And if you love doing it, you'll find a way to make money. Now, you may not be a millionaire, but being happy with what you're doing and enjoying what you're doing and walking out into work every day, whatever that means, excited about going in, is worth a whole lot more than making $1 million a year and literally dreading waking up and going into the office every day. Wow.
It's funny how people who've done that can say that. But what I'll say is, I always say that Mark is my rich white friend and I'm his black friend. He's rich and I'm purposeful. So together we make, no, I'm just joking. Go ahead, Jonathan.
I think it's interesting, speaking from a generational perspective, Mark, that you put so much emphasis on purpose in what you do in your work. I think
that's very different.
I separate purpose from passion. Passion has a lot to do with work and enjoying what you're doing at any given point. In my opinion, purpose is what drives you, what you're running away from, what you're running towards, and being able to identify one, the other, or both are big steps.
Yeah, and for me, it was like, I really want to make a difference in people's lives. Now, I play in the chemical industry, so in my world of where I play, how can I make a difference in people's lives? I'm actually searching for a new purpose, as Kareem knows. I don't have the answer yet, but how can I make a difference in people's lives for the next 20 years of my life?
I always say that passion is the fire of life. It is the fuel that moves the vehicle of purpose. If you're looking out here today, there are a number of ways. Google it. Figure out how you can do this. Begin to create a personal vision statement. Determine what your values are. Make a list. Write a journal. Embrace a mindfulness practice. Thank you guys for tuning in. We're going to continue to talk about purpose and passion because I think a lot of us get it wrong. Thanks for tuning in today. God bless you all. Grace and peace.